Inspiring, educating, and offering hope for families like yours. This is the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. A licensed counselor for 18 years and now a professional of counseling. Dr. Sonja wants you to know that you can be happier. Your family can be stronger. Your marriage can be peaceful and loving. That safe, open, and enjoyable relationships with your sons and daughters is possible. And that you and your children can have the emotional strength you need to lead a life with few regrets. The phone lines are open, so reach out to Dr. Sonja right now at 678-688-IBNX. That's 678-688-4269. Or send your questions to www.helpformyfamily.com. And now, here's Dr. Sonja.
Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Sonja Sutherland, and welcome to the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. On this show, which we air every morning now on IBNX, we are about family wellness and emotional health and mental wellness. And our goal is to make sure that you have the tools that you need and that your family has the tools that it needs to be stronger. We will deal with questions that you have about how to improve your family relationships with your children, with your spouse, with your parents, with your siblings. We want to make sure that you have answers to questions about mental health, emotional issues like depression, anxiety, grief, trauma. All of those issues are so important to know how to deal with, substance abuse, and how to help your family when you're faced with those issues. We believe here that family is the first and primary place where people gain a sense of who they are and the first place where they feel belonging. And it is just innately built into us. And so when people don't find that at home, they look for it in any other place that they can find it, even if it's the worst place in the world for them to find it. And many emotional and mental health issues really stem from some of those initial impacts within the family. And so our determination here on the show is to make sure that we give you as many tools as possible so that you can change yourself, you can change your family, you can change your legacy. And so today we have some guests with us, and we are talking about single parent families. Over the last 20 years, single parent families have become even more common than the so-called nuclear family that we're used to hearing about, where there's a mother, father, children. Today there are just all sorts of single parent families with single moms, single dads, even grandparents raising grandchildren. In the last 20, 30 years, we have seen single parenthood rise from 8% to 23% of children living in single parent homes. And in 2017, 19 million children were living in single parent homes. And so it is a significant part of our society and bears talking about. There's so many stressors. And we're going to talk with our guests who are going to talk about some of those stressors from a parent standpoint and from the standpoint of a young person growing up in the home of a single parent. And so we have with us today 3 guests, and I want to introduce them or let them introduce themselves a little bit as well. So we have Rhythm. Hey,
hello.
Rhythm.
Hey, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Rhythm is the founder and CEO of Rhythm Entertainment, and you have had your company for 16 years now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So you're a father.
That I am. Yes.
And you're a youth group leader.
Yes.
You are a DJ and producer. You're an event designer. You're a snowboarder. And I'm going to say this because you said it, an all-around adventure junkie.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about some of that. That sounds like so much fun. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm probably one of those parents that does not mind doing dangerous things. Whether it's jumping out of planes, snowboarding down 16,000-foot high mountains, wakeboarding.
Like, you had me at jumping out of plane. The rest of that.
But you know, life was meant to be lived. So I'm a calculated risk taker though, since I am a single father. So most of the things I actually include my daughter in. So we both snowboard, and she's pretty good at it.
Awesome.
she won't jump out of a plane, but she has no problem watching me jump out of a plane. So yeah, but when you get to share things with each other, it kind of takes the sting or scare out of some of the fun things. But yeah, I enjoy life to the fullest, and a lot of that means getting outside and doing some things that most of my friends think are a bit crazy.
But we all enjoy watching you do it. Just like you are. And then we also have two young folks with us today. We have Shannon Rose and Nigel. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Well, I'm Shannon Rose. I was here last week.
Not in person. Today you're in person.
Yeah, not in person,
Yeah.
though. I'm the quarter of a century girl. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Nigel Stoddard. I'm a visitor. Fun.
And a man of many words, I can see.
Yeah.
All right. So Shannon Rose is a student at Augusta University, and Nigel is a young man from New York who's visiting Georgia, actually, for a while.
Well, he lives here now.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
you live here now, so welcome to Georgia.
Thank you.
All right. And so we want to talk a little bit about parents and children. Oh, I always forget to say hey.
That's okay. We're not special.
Hey.
We're here with you every week,
Don't
so
worry,
it doesn't even
we'll
matter.
get in there sometime, sooner or later,
We'll chime
we're
in.
here with
Everybody knows Monique and Juan are here, but welcome anyway. All right. And so first I think I want to talk about a question that has come up in terms of single parents. Have you ever wondered why parent-child relationships seem to become strained or difficult in our children's teenage years? Rhythm is going to share some thoughts about the answer to questions like this and practical ideas about how to change this occurrence in our families in the immediate. Rhythm, why do you think this is a question that really needs to be talked about?
Mainly because it's a question that it's said a lot. With different people that I've come in contact with that are parents. My company does a lot of social events that are built around, bar and bat mitzvahs, big weddings, corporate events, but parents in general will tend to think this is an inevitable thing, is that once my child becomes a teenager, then they want nothing to do with me. But I think the bigger question I would get is why my child always included me. My daughter's 23 now, but even when she was 13, 15, 17, it was, hey dad, you're coming to hang out with me and my friends.
That's probably because you're just one of those cool dads, right? If he's snowboarding and he's jumping out of planes and he's a DJ, you know what? None of the rest of us parents are like that. So no wonder your kid wants to hang out with you.
Yeah, I mean, that does help. But I think beyond that was that I made sure that she always felt that I wanted to hang out with her. And I think that is the difference that I see in other dynamics, is we as parents want to be providers, so we're working hard, but I feel that no matter how much you work, there still has to be a time that you create that shows at a young age that you want to hang out with your child. And then if that becomes the norm, then as they get older, there's a lesser, chance of them wanting to break free, because now they're actually really comfortable hanging out with, and it's wasn't just my daughter. I mean, like, her friends, they come to our house and it's like, hey dad, what are we doing today? And I'm like, I'm hoping you guys are going because I'm going to the studio downstairs. And they're like, you're not coming to the movies with us? I'm like, yeah, I'm just not even interested in that movie. But, but I think, again, as long as you are offering and showing them that you want to hang out and that you want to be a part of it, and you engage and be a part of it. Like I always, it's kind of like when you watch the parents that show up to the kids' baseball game. And they sit in the stands and watch their kid play, which is totally different than the parent who's jumping up every time.
Screaming,
It's
Right.
like,
cussing the ref out.
Right.
and when the game's over, they're running up and giving everybody high fives, whether they won or lost. That kid is probably hanging out with his parent. That parent, everywhere. Versus the one that's like, oh, good job. Or better luck next time. And then it's back to the norm. You go to your room, I go to my room. And, you know, so I think that if we can at least begin, you know, it's kind of hard. You can't start when they're 14.
This is very true.
You know, you should be starting when they're like 6.
Well, you know, as you talk about that, I imagine parents on a continuum, right? And that parents will kind of fall all along that continuum in terms of degrees of their ability, willingness, availability, whatever you want to call it, to engage in those different ways with their children, right?
Yeah.
And then I imagine that along that continuum, there are multiple reasons why parents fall along that continuum, right? And their reasons could just run the gamut outside of the whole, I will need to be a provider. How do I do that well, right, within the resources that I have in terms of employment? Reasons could be mental or emotional health reasons, depression, anxiety, things that pull people away and create isolation. It could be, my mom and dad never did that with me. Why do I need to do that with my kid?
Right.
You know, it could be any number of things, really. It could be the stress of divorce, being a single parent, coming out of a divorce, or coming out of the death of a spouse, or whatever it could be. That also impacts the ability of a parent to engage in the ways that you're describing, right? So when you guys hear about that, hear what Rhythm is talking about, and then you think about different parents, what comes to you?
Well, for me, I know that you always did a good job, or it's different than what Rhythm was saying, but I still felt like I could come to you and you were engaged in it. You were quiet, but I know it doesn't seem
That's
like
because
it.
she's listening.
I'm paying her by the positive word.
In terms of if we're at a game, if we're at a track meet, something like that, but she'll sit down and talk about it with me, and that I know my friends and we can come sit down with her and have a conversation for a long time, and that's something that, you know,
Yeah, because I'm not going snowboarding.
yeah. I can't even picture you going snowboarding or jumping out of a plane. I would do that.
I know.
I could totally picture that.
You can
It
picture
would
that.
be hilarious. I mean, it'd be great.
Yes, it would. What are you thinking, Akil?
For me, it was always in the car. My father would always talk to me in the car, and especially during the divorce, he made sure that I knew what was going on at all times and understood why it was happening. And whenever we would get in the car, I know there was going to be a talk about something, especially when I played football. He wasn't really loud during my football games, but after the football games, I'll get a whole earful in the car.
Car confessionals.
So we're talking a lot about sports, right? You guys were involved heavily in sports. You did,
Gymnastics and now track and field. Well, I did a few other things, but
yeah, you did swimming, you did basketball.
volleyball,
Oh, yeah.
gymnastics, yeah.
Yeah. And you did football.
Yeah, just football. I tried track and then work out.
Not a runner, huh?
But even as you say, you know, and talk about how much I was or wasn't engaged, and I guess how much I was, it's hard for me to remember. Because I think, you know, I know that I remember, especially early post-divorce, separation and divorce, I was in my head a lot, right? That stress of going through divorce as a woman, right? And figuring out, how do I become the single mom primary provider piece of it. How do I manage that whole custody visitation thing? How do I manage the conflict between her dad and I? Because there was conflict between her dad and I. All of that takes a toll on a single parent's ability to really figure out what is all this going to look like, because you're figuring out multiple things all at the same time. And I'm not going to lie, that was not easy.
But then you also have, Dr. Sutherland, you have parents who are trying to find that balance of I can't be their best friend. I still have to be their parent, and finding that fine line of, okay, what does this look like, whether, like you said, after a divorce or a death or whatever. How do parents, really find that fine line of balance of, hey, why don't we go out and snowboard, and why don't we go shopping? Let's go shopping over here. So, and not be that friend, but really start to listen to your child and what they have to say. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think that's a hard question. Even my parents will ask that. Will tell my daughter, it's like, oh yeah, your dad, he lets you get away with anything, or he whatever, but it was never that way. It just from the outside looks that way. Like my daughter knows the boundaries, and she knows, but again, it started when she was like 6 and 5, and I went into this kind of single parenting thing as, I'm not out to be your best friend. That doesn't mean I can't be your best friend.
Sure.
So instead of me punishing you, I'm going to allow you to determine what happens based on your decisions. So, so I tell this story to some of my friends, and that's like, my daughter at 6, if she wanted to do something, then I allowed her to make that decision. And I laid out the consequences. So I can think back to when it's like, oh, I want to go to this birthday party. It's, oh, you got to clean your room. You decide. You can clean your room and go to the birthday party, or you can decide not to go to the birthday party and chill in your dirty room. Because I don't have to go in your room. But I want you to be able to understand that every decision has a consequence.
Sure.
And then you see this little 6-year-old go in the room and actually take like 15 to 20 minutes to think
Really
about
think
it.
about it.
Look around the room. Like, do I really want to do all of this work? How close am I to this person? And then come back and say, you know what, Dad? I'm going to clean my room. Then can we go to the party? I'm like, yeah, no problem. But it wasn't about me being her friend. It was about me setting her up to be able to really think about the decisions that have to be made, because everything has to get done. And so my daughter can actually tell her friends, yeah, my dad never punished me. And it's like, yeah, because you just didn't do wrong more than once.
And you set it up to allow for natural consequences.
Exactly.
Not consequences that you had to impose.
Right.
But that she was able to understand my own actions have their own consequences.
Exactly.
I have to decide if I like them or not, if I want them or not, and then go accordingly.
Right.
And you're also talking about as well, just the idea of relationship building, whether you're married or single. Relationship building with your child.
Yes.
And we can talk about that when we come back from the break, and just talk about, even as you go into single parenthood, if it's something that's new and it's not something that you started out with, a lot of what you did in the pre-work before you got to be a single parent, before you were divorced, before you were widowed, matters now. Because it's going to have a huge impact on how things roll out in the stress of becoming a single parent. So we'll talk about that when we come back. We'll just take a quick break, and then just join us again on the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show.
Do you want peace in your family relationships instead of conflict? Do you want a safe, loving marriage instead of one that is failing? Are you troubled about what's happening with your children and need help for them? At Legacy Changers Counseling Centers, the goal is to strengthen individuals and families with cutting-edge emotional and mental health interventions. The exceptionally trained counselors at Legacy provide the specialized guidance you need in a safe environment of belonging so that you can make the life changes you and your loved ones need. Get real help for your emotional and relationship needs. Call today at 404-334-7575. That's 404-334-7575. You can also find us on the web at legacychangerscounseling.com. Call now and transform your life today. 404-334-7575 or legacychangerscounseling.com.
It's a simple song. Yeah. La da 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 da. Yesterday, a man stepped to me and said, "How can you smile when your world is crumbling down?" I said, "Here's my secret. When I wanna cry, I take a look around and I see that I'm getting by, and I hold on.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dr. Sonja Sutherland, and you're listening to the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. We are talking today about single-parent families and some of the stressors and some of the contributing factors to some of those stressors. And we're talking with young people who have grown up in single-parent homes, as well as a single dad. We left the last segment just talking about the relational aspects developed between parents and children. Regardless of whether you're single or whether you are married, those early relational dynamics that begin when children are 4, 5, 6 years old really translate and take you into kind of predicting a little bit about how things are going to go with your teenagers, because we were talking about what makes it so difficult for teenagers and parents to really begin to communicate, right? And so Rhythm was talking about just having started at age 6 with his daughter and younger, just building that relationship dynamic and natural consequences. And Monique, of course, during the break, came up with a really great point. I'm going to let you start with your question so that our folks listening and looking can actually hear what you wanted to tell us.
So I was just in agreement with Rhythm. Each child is so very different, and building the relationship with them starting off very young. I started mine off straight from the womb. You know, I always made sure I had quality time because, in my personal opinion, everything starts from the womb out. Because by time they get to a certain age, for me, you've kind of lost them. So at 2 years old, I'm going to the nail salon. Come on, girls, let's go to the nail salon. And so I would take them and really try to have that experience. But it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Dr. Sutherland, last week. Your two daughters are very different. One wants to go shopping and the other one doesn't. Well, I have the same dynamics in my home. And so trying to figure out what works. Now, my youngest, she didn't even want to deal with me, even though I started with her very young. My oldest daughter, she always, even still to this day, now they both come around me. All their girlfriends are near me. But it started so very young in the communication, listening. Parents, we've got to listen to our children because they're talking so much. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're saying things, and if we're not paying attention, we miss everything in between. You know, so
Definitely.
And not even, and not only are they saying things, they're doing things. Look at their body language. There's a lot that you can learn about your child just watching them. What are they looking at on television? What are they reading? What are they listening to? All of those things give us information about what's going on with our child, right? Shannon Rose, you wanted to comment on something?
Yes, when Rhythm was talking earlier about when your daughter was making the decision at 6 years old, I was reading this book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and he was talking about critical thinking and how today a lot of us kids, we grow up and we get done with school and we're like, okay, now what? Like, we're looking around because, you know, it's like they're almost telling us what to do. And putting that back into family, I'm wondering if, like, Mom, if you ever felt this way, feeling like you have to make sure we're doing the right thing, you know, as opposed to just kind of letting us figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think probably I had to learn to let you figure it out. I think what happened with me was coming into being a single mom, I felt a stress, a pressure that all of a sudden there was no quote unquote nuclear family. And I had to do this right. And if I didn't do it right, I would screw up my kids. And so, and I can't screw up my kids. I'm a counselor.
Right.
What the heck?
Get it together.
Right? And then there was that whole perfectionist thing that I got going on anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so and I'm a control freak. And
What?
so all of that.
No, not you.
Okay.
I'm learning something.
And so part of it was, I probably did tell you guys a lot what to do because I wanted to make sure that everything went perfectly. Well, I figured out along the way that I was not in control. There's just that was just an illusion that I wanted to have because I felt out of control of my life.
Absolutely.
Right? Going through a divorce. And so because I felt out of control of my life, I wanted to exert some type of pressure, and people experience this. When you lose control of some critical aspect of your life, you try to exert additional control over other areas. You want to know something in my life is under my control.
Right.
It's not this marriage, it's not this divorce, it's not this or the other thing. And you look out and you try to find one. Well, for me initially it was my kids, right? And so I kind of moved past that.
Yeah.
And I think we got to the point, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, where I started to allow you guys to make decisions on your own that you had to think through and not kind of tell you.
Yeah, I definitely remember the transition, because once you started to allow us to do that, I had a really hard time. I would be like, okay, I don't know what to do, and eventually I got used to it, and it's empowering once you figure it out, that I can talk to you, get your guidance, opinion, but then still make my own decision.
And I think it's hard for single parents, and there's a difference because you started out earlier as a single parent. It seems like.
Yeah. So I had mine was a bit different because I started off at birth as a single parent, and then got married when my daughter was at 8, 9 years old. And then that divorce happened 8 years later.
Yeah.
So she started off with dad all to herself for the most part, then into a family dynamic, and then back to dad and I, so it was a different situation in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think, the relationship building, because it was so early, it got us through. It was like when we were going through the divorce, I took my daughter out for breakfast once the decision was made to have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And then at 17, she's coming back and saying, to me, it's like, Dad, it's going to be okay. You have been amazing. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be saying this to you. And you are, and so it was weird. I was not expecting that at all. But yeah, there's so much when it comes to establishing the relationship, simply because, in my opinion, at least for my situation, I can talk about how easy parenting was, because I always, and it's part of my personality probably, but I think we can all get there, is that I always look at her, like my daughter. So I can handle anything. So I focus the attention on her. It's like, what does she need? I can deal with me, on this side, and deal with her at this moment in time. And so she always felt a level of priority in my life, outside of everything else her dad, was doing. And that's hard when it's hard when your dad's a DJ, or your dad, before then I was a dancer in a dance company, and so
I
she
didn't
was
know that.
always.
I need a video.
Oh, yes.
Hold on, wait a minute.
I was
What kind of
so
dancing?
my daughter.
I need to know.
So I was a hip hop choreographer.
Okay. Clean it up.
I was the first hip hop person to be allowed to teach at the Atlanta Ballet.
Really?
Wow.
Cool.
And so
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. So and my daughter's a dancer too. That probably came from dragging her to dance studios at 2 and 3 years old. But when you are in some sort of entertainment side, people know you. And so everywhere you go, you typically run into, and I made it my business or my priority, that no matter where we were, And with my daughter, I'm with my daughter.
Right.
So I can say hello and I can say, but I'm not going to sit here and talk about the party last night or this is our time at the mall, not shopping.
Yeah.
My daughter's not a shopper either, but for
Okay.
some reason she just loved going to the mall. So I think she just likes to people watch. And so, but it all stemmed from me making sure that, hey, I'm going to make sure that you understand that you're a priority and that this relationship is a priority no matter what else is happening in the world.
I think as I hear you, you speak from a space of, you said, I can handle anything, right? That dialogue in your head is a key, I think, in terms of how you were able to focus then on your daughter. I think if you're a single parent and you don't have that mindset, I can handle anything, and you're also not listening to dialogue in your head around your own self-esteem issues, your own rejection issues, your own all that other stuff, emotional issues around separation and divorce and whatever it is, the things that get in the way of your thinking and understanding, I'm okay.
Right.
Right.
And I'm gonna be okay. And my kids are gonna be fine, right? That whole space, if you're not in that space, it becomes much more difficult to focus like you need to focus
Right.
on your child and on developing that relationship that you need to with your child, and then mediating it for your child, because they're going through their own trauma. If you're a single parent because of a divorce or because of a death, right?
Right.
And so being a child in a single parent home, if that's all you've known, that's a different dynamic,
Right.
right? That's a different dynamic as well. And so there are a couple of things to think about.
Yeah. You know, it from what you're saying, Dr. Sutherland, it is all about that positive self-talk. And that's exactly what you're referring to, is positive self-talk. You know, and you also have to instill that positive self-talk within your children. You know, it goes back to, what Nick's saying, it starts from the womb. You know, we develop that relationship with our child and our children from day one.
Right.
Not from day 2001.
Right.
We develop it from day one. And that's where a lot of parents make that mistake, is that, oh, I'm going to go ahead and work, during the early stages of my child's life, and then I'm going to pick up, during the mid stages of the child's life. That's not how it works.
Right.
We have to start and build that relationship from day one. I have to commend all single parents out there.
Absolutely.
Because, it takes a strong individual to be able to be that single parent and deal with the pressures that come along with it. Anyone or any male or female can father or mother a child, but it takes a woman and a man to be, that responsible individual and step up to the plate in that child's life.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think if we all understand as single parents that it's bigger than us,
Yes.
then we need to keep putting positive in us so that then we
Right.
can share
Yeah.
Absolutely.
positive with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means getting your own counseling,
Yes.
so that you
Yes.
can actually
Yes.
work your way through that. Sometimes we come to single parenthood or anything in our lives with a lot of baggage, and that's just real.
Yep.
Right? People come with
Right.
a lot of baggage, whether it's from their relationships with their own parents or just whatever other stuff that just goes on for us as people. And sometimes we need to get help so
Right.
that we can be for our children, what they need for us to be.
Yes. It's about being selfless, not selfish.
That's
Yes.
right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yes.
So folks, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us, and when we come back, we will be talking more about single-parent families from the perspective of young people growing up in those families, right here on the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show.
Tune in every Monday from 10 a.m. to noon right here on IBNX Radio for the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show.
Broken heart and no one else could see. I drew a smile on my face to pay paper over me. But wounds heal when tears dry and cracks they don't show. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. Let's go back to simplicity. I feel like I've been missing me. Was not who I'm supposed to be. I felt this darkness over me. We all get there eventually. I never knew where I belonged, but I was right and you were wrong. Been telling myself all along. Don't be so hard on yourself, no. Learn to forgive, learn to let go. Everyone trips, everyone falls. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. 'Cause I'm just tired of marching on my own. Kind of afraid I feel it in my bones. Won't let my heart turn into stone. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. I'm standing on top of the world, right where I wanna be. So how can this dark cloud keep raining over me? But hearts break and hell's a place that everyone knows. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. Let's go back to simplicity. I feel like I've been missing me. Was not who I'm supposed to be. I felt this darkness over me. We all get there eventually. I never knew where I belonged, but I was right and you were wrong. Been telling myself all along. Don't be so hard on yourself, no. Learn to forgive, learn to let go. Everyone trips, everyone falls. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. 'Cause I'm just tired of marching on my own. Kind of afraid I feel it in my bones. Won't let my heart turn into stone. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. I like to wave goodbye. I'm not to see my life through someone else's eyes. It's not an easy road, but no, I'm not alone. So I won't be so hard on myself no more. Don't be so hard on yourself, no. Learn to forgive, learn to let go. Everyone trips, everyone falls. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. 'Cause I'm just tired of marching on my own. Kind of afraid I feel it in my bones. Won't let my heart turn into stone. So don't be so hard on yourself, no. 'Cause I'm just tired of marching on my own. Kind of afraid I feel it in my bones. Won't let my heart turn into stone.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sonja Sutherland. September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. If you are in crisis or someone you know is at risk, call the toll-free National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a national network of local crisis centers that provides free and confidential emotional support to people in suicidal crisis or emotional distress, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The service is available to everyone. The deaf and hard of hearing can contact the Lifeline via TTY at 1-800-799-4889. All calls are confidential. No matter what you're experiencing, there is support for getting your life back on track. If you are a veteran in crisis or concerned about one, connect with the Veterans Crisis Line to reach caring, qualified responders with the Department of Veterans Affairs, many of whom are veterans themselves. Call 1-800-273-8255. This free support is confidential and available to everyone every day, 24/7. It serves all veterans, all service members, National Guard and Reserve, and their family members and friends. If you or someone you know is feeling anxious or alone or thinking about suicide, these are just some of the signs that you or a loved one may be in crisis. For more information on the signs of suicidality and on suicide prevention, you can go online to the National Institute of Mental Health at www.nimh.nih.gov. These and many other resources may be helpful. No matter what you're experiencing, there is support for getting your life back on track. Reach out today. Someone is waiting to help. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. We are talking today about single parent families, and we are going to look at a different question right now. We want to know what your kids think about living in a single parent home and what your children talk about as siblings, and how does all of that mentally affect them? How does it affect their emotional health? So Shannon Rose and Akil, I really want to tap into your knowledge here because you guys grew up in single parent homes. Talk about why you think this is important for people to know about.
Okay, well, I think because it affects us so much mentally, you know, and I don't think that all parents, you know, take that into consideration. And I know for me and Sherry and my sister growing up, we had a good relationship, and she helped me cope a lot with what was going on, even if I didn't understand it. A lot of times, actually, you know, she knew what was going on more than I did, but she didn't tell me the details because she didn't want to freak me out more, you know. And I remember this certain time, actually, we were sitting on the stairs, and I heard Mom, you and Dad kind of arguing in the kitchen, and I was sitting on the stairs behind the banister, just kind of hanging on to the banister, and I was crying as I was listening. And Sherry Ann came up behind me, and she kind of held me and gave me a hug and said, "It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay," you know. And I remember that like crystal clear, and that's why I think siblings, you know, so important.
Every time I hear that story, I want to cry.
It breaks your heart, right?
Yes, I've heard this story, and I remember the first time they told me about it. And, you know, you don't realize as parents,
right,
how much your kids hear,
Right.
right? And I thought I was being discreet at the time, right?
That West Indian woman in you went discreet, baby. I'm gonna tell you right now.
That Jamaican girl came
yes.
out, right? So my mother is Cuban, right? So that's probably part of it too.
Right.
But you just don't know, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
it is important. It was important for me to hear that from them. And so as single parents, it's important for us to hear what they went through.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
because sometimes we just are so concerned with ourselves.
Right.
We don't really know and understand. Akil, you were going to say something too.
I had to play that role with my little brother Jelani. Growing up, I always comforted him, especially after a whooping. He would always run to me after a whooping, and I would rock him in the rocking chair when he's crying. Growing up, he struggles in expressing how he feels and talking, so I would always have to talk to him. And still today, he doesn't say much. You know, it's hard to tell what he's thinking. And all I can do is just talk to him and tell him how I feel. You know, and hopefully, you know, he'll tell me how he feels. That's about it. That's all. Because dealing with a divorce, we just have to deal with it. You know, we took the information that we got, and growing up, we started to understand. Because at the end of the day, our parents are still human. You know, so that's something that we had to take in consideration growing up.
Yeah, and you make a good point that, you know, remembering our parents aren't perfect, you know, and sometimes we were like, we look up and we think that they should be, but, you know, like you said, they are human. And earlier we were talking about adapting to the situation. Akil was talking about that earlier. But I also want to make a note of, like, the good things. I remember I had a floor bed, And so it was a really cool bed. And Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, my mom and Sherry Ann would come in my room. We'd all just sit on the bed, lay on the bed, have our coffee or our tea, and just chat. And I absolutely loved those mornings. Those were the best mornings in the world, just because we laughed, we cried, we got a lot of critical thinking done. But it filled my heart a lot, and I loved that, and I really appreciated that time we had together.
Was that the house bed?
Yeah, the one I had in college in Iowa.
Yeah.
That was a cool bed, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
That's until my dog destroyed it.
That dog.
I know.
So they got dogs
Oh no.
after the divorce,
Yes.
right?
I will say animals have an awesome effect on just soothing you and helping you, and I talk to Daisy like she's a person, and I don't know if that's a bad or good thing, but it helps. It really does.
I'll tell you what, I think, and I'm not a dog person. I'm not an animal person.
At all.
What she said. But we got 2 dogs after the divorce, one for each of them.
Oh wow.
Because I knew the dogs had healing capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought, okay, this is something I can probably do for them. I can live with dogs
Right.
for a little while if it is going to help them. And so they got 2 little dogs, and they named them, and it was interesting for a while. I had a huge curve to get over,
Right.
just getting used to dogs, but it was worth it.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
It was worth it.
I mean, pets are judgment free,
Mm-hmm.
and so for kids, whether we as parents do it or not, there's a certain level of judgment that comes inherently from parents
Yeah.
to their children.
Yeah.
Mm.
So pets have none of that, and for youth, it's like, yo, I can just talk and cry and do whatever, and that dog is gonna hug me and lick me and not
Yeah.
worry about it,
Yeah.
And so I think as parents we can take notes from that, and
We can.
and
We should.
and be pet-like sometimes. Sometimes it's like
Well.
we want to fix everything
Yeah.
as parents.
Yes, we do.
And one thing I've learned is that I know just enough to know that I don't know much.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Somebody else made that quote, not me. So, but
And it doesn't matter how smart you are.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like you just don't. So sometimes, like, your kids just want to be heard and not talked to or
Yeah.
Right.
told about.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I call it being the pet. Is just run to me, let it out, and I will hug you and kiss you.
Okay, I
I'm
was
not
about
gonna
to
be
say.
licking you in the face. But you'll get a hug, you'll get a kiss, you'll get a shoulder, you can cry, you can whatever it is, and that's that. You won't hear you should have or you should do or any of that. Just be okay with that, and then go grab some pancakes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mom loves pancakes. But going off what you said, for kids or for younger adults or, as a children in the situation, I learned how important it is to voice what I need. Parents don't read minds, and voicing what I need. And, sometimes Mom she prompted me, like, help me understand what you need, and it got to a point to be like, Mom, like, please don't talk. I just need you to listen, especially because she's got the counselor type deal. But it helps, and it's like I just need you to listen. I don't need a response. I just want a hug. There are multiple times I just sat. My mom has this really, really comfy chair. You have a great chair, by the way, and we would just sit in it. And sometimes we wouldn't say a word. It would just be I would sit on her lap and just cry or laugh or whatever, and that's yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, sometimes for single parents, there's a level of helplessness that you feel. Not only because you can't control the fact that you're now a single parent,
Right.
but you also can't control everything that happens with your children. You can't control some of the things that you may not be able to do for your children.
Right.
You just can't control a lot of things, right? And you sometimes I think there are some parents who feel levels of guilt and wonder, had this not happened, would this be different for my kid? Or had that
Oh,
not,
yeah.
you know what I mean? And so we have to be careful not to get ourselves in those kinds of circular thinking, because, you know, there's never a way to know that one thing is connected to another. Is connected. Stuff just is.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. Stuff just is, right? And just being okay. And I think the thing that for me works and has worked is it's going to be okay,
Yeah.
right? There
Right.
is a level of resilience that all people have, right? It's just that whatever life throws at you, it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
You may not know how it's
But
going to be
it will.
okay,
Right.
but it will be okay. And if you sit with that, then when things come, you just kind of learn to roll with the punches. It's going to be all right one way or
Oh
another.
yeah, and I think if you pay attention to not trying to assign fault,
Yeah.
not assigning
Yeah.
a fault to yourself and to the other person involved. You know, whether it's the person that you're divorcing, or for some people, the person who passed away. You know, there's a level of resentment and fault to that. You know, or between you and your kids. You know, and so I think that these thoughts come into all of our heads. You know, what did I do wrong, or how did this happen, or you know, I thought I was doing the right thing, but I think you have to kind of either self-empower or find a way to be inspired and empowered to say, you know what, it's not my fault or their fault. It's a situation, and we're going to get through it. And we're going to get through it by being there for each other.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
necessarily by just, you know, trying to force things to work, rather than just living through the thing.
Right.
Living through the
Letting
thing.
it work.
Yeah.
Right.
And even if there is a level of fault, there's no point dwelling on it.
Right.
Right.
You know,
Right.
some things
What's
you just
happened
have
is
to
happened.
let go.
Yes.
It
Yes.
is what it is. And in order to move forward, in order to move into health, you just gotta let things go.
It's a process, though.
It's a process.
You
yeah.
know, and some people, you know, some people get stuck.
Yes.
And it's okay. Whoever's the one that's not stuck needs to be patient with the other one.
Right.
Please be patient with them. You
Because we
know.
are human.
We are
Like,
human.
You said it best. It's
Yes,
like we are
yes.
human.
Yes, yes. All right, well, we're going to take another quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about some additional tips that single parent families can think about as you navigate that road. We'll be back in a few minutes at the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show.
Yes, baby. Ooh, how sweet it is to be loved by you. Ooh, baby.
Do you want peace in your family relationships instead of conflict? Do you want a safe, loving marriage instead of one that is failing? Are you troubled about what's happening with your children and need help for them? At Legacy Changers Counseling Centers, the goal is to strengthen individuals and families with cutting-edge emotional and mental health interventions. The exceptionally trained counselors at Legacy provide the specialized guidance you need in a safe environment of belonging so that you can make the life changes you and your loved ones need. Get real help for your emotional and relationship needs. Call today at 404-334-7575. That's 404-334-7575. You can also find us on the web at legacychangerscounseling.com. Call now and transform your life today. 404-334-7575 or legacychangerscounseling.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. We're here to talk today talking about single-parent families. And right now, I just want to see if we can focus on some really important considerations that we want to make sure parents take away and that we want to make sure young people take away from this conversation. And so I know that Shanna Rose, you mentioned in part of what you talked about before about sibling connection and support. Can you talk just a little bit more about that and tips that you might give to young people listening to this that maybe have conflict with their siblings as well and are living in some single-parent relationship families as well?
I would say that it's important for the sibling connection. You have to remember that in terms of divorce or separation or even death, you guys are going through the same situation, and supporting each other through it, I feel, is so vital because that opens up a place for you to talk to someone who knows exactly what you're going through. And for those who don't have siblings, pets are great. I don't, or even a really good friend, a best friend, but that connection. I'm a talker, so that helps me. I have my sister to talk to. So my sister's less of a talker, but she knows that when she needs to talk, that I'm there to listen. So that's kind of what I was putting towards sibling connection.
Yeah, and I think it's important for parents to kind of be looking at that sibling relationship and that sibling connection and seeing what's going on in that connection and doing whatever we can to shore that thing up, shore those relationships up, knowing that, for example, as single parents, we're probably pressed in multiple different areas. That sibling connection can be a helpful support when parents are pulled away and can't really be there like they want to be there, right? But if that sibling connection is built and we're intentional about it, that becomes a secondary support.
And to add to that, I know some friends of mine who have, parents who've gone through divorce, don't have their dad in their life, and they have siblings and they're not close to their siblings. And I don't have an answer for that or anything like that, but I feel for my friends because they talk about how hard it is. My brother doesn't get it, or my brother's not home, and I'm having to go through this, and this, and they're out doing this, and that I've never had to experience that, but I know that there are plenty of people out there who have siblings that do experience that, and I can just imagine how hard that would be.
And making it even more important for parents to be aware and step in. Yeah. Or if you're a grandparent and you see it, step in, right? Or if you're an aunt or an uncle, and single parents existing by themselves is a really, 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 really tough thing, right? And that community needs to be around to be able to really make it work. And so, in a loving way, if you're seeing it, if you're a family member of someone who's a single parent and you see something, in a loving way, step in and say, hey, I noticed this, I wonder, right, if this might help.
Oh yeah, it helps a lot because we're guaranteed not to always get it right as single parents. And so, you know, when my parents, they sensed it or saw it, it was easy, you know, for them to then go to my daughter and say, hey, let's talk, or let's, you know, yeah, your dad might not have handled that the right way, but let's talk through it, and then together we can then go back to him to work through that, and it works.
And
Laughter is very important. Very important. It came to the point where Jelani's pretty much my best friend. We laugh every day. We make sure to make each other laugh every day.
You have such a smile saying that. Good memories.
Yeah.
y'all are crazy.
It doesn't matter what happens, you know, how mad we are. The good thing is, you know, we're not afraid of each other, you know, because he gets heated. Jelani gets real heated, but I'm not afraid of him. I know that I could go up to him and do something stupid, and he wouldn't, you know, he wouldn't react in a hostile way. He would just laugh, you know, and he'll do the same for me. And it's beautiful because we never been apart, and when I do leave him, I feel guilty. We get it all the time. People say that they rarely see me and Jelani away from each other or not together, and when they do see us separate, either he's in the car or I'm in the car. You know, so it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, and then communication. I know that's something that you wanted to talk about, rhythm, and you guys had it on your list as well as really important considerations. You want to talk a little bit about communication and just what your thoughts are?
For me, I look at communication as, you know, most people, I used to look at communication as two people talking. And what I've learned over the years is that communication is a combination of talking and listening, you know, talking and hearing. And so I think that was kind of like the epiphany kind of moment, is when you realize that most of my life I was missing the listening and hearing part. I would just talk, you know, I need my point to be heard, but I'm not actually getting back what the other person on the other side is. But I applied the new version of communication that I've learned with not only my daughter, but everyone around me, is that I listen and hear equally, or if not more than I actually talk. Because I'm a talker. Like, if someone would let me, I'll just talk. But when it's in a conversation time, then I make it a serious point to shut up and listen, you know, and focus on things one thing at a time, you know, like, I know this might be a whole nother segment, but men and women are different.
Oh gosh, yes.
Especially when it comes to the understanding that women are multitaskers in general.
Say it again.
Women are multitaskers. Where men, as much as we like to think we are multitaskers, the majority of us are not. Are not. We like to do multiple things one at a time, and we call it multitasking.
It's okay.
Where women, no, they can have 18 things going at the same time and not skip a beat. So I think when it comes to communication, parties need to understand that. So when a woman you know, whether you're the daughter or a friend, a spouse, or anything, is when a woman is communicating with a man, it needs to be one point at a time. Because once you make it more than one, you've lost him, because he can't
Process
it all. So
So you're saying to daughters who are listening,
Yes.
who are trying to communicate with their dads,
Yes.
one thing at a time.
One thing at a time. Don't say, the boyfriend made me mad, that girl did this guy did this, da, da, da. Your dad will be overwhelmed and have nothing to offer. You know?
Poor guys.
So, you know, take it one item at a time and get a resolution to that item and then move to the next one. And as fathers with your daughters, if it comes at you, you also have to be able to say, all right, sweetheart, let's slow down. I can only process one thing at a time. So let's work together on this.
Right.
So what's the number one problem you have at this moment? And then let's work through that first. And I think when you can do that, then your conversation actually becomes a useful one, because neither one of you are lost
Right.
in that moment.
Yeah.
And
And
so
what-
you're saying it's also
just-
important for dads to say that.
Yes.
And to let their daughters know, and
Yes.
or their children, this is how it is for me.
Yeah, no matter how highly they think of us, we are not Superman. You know, Superman is a fictional character.
And it's just a T-shirt.
And it's T-shirt, yeah. A T-shirt that many men wear proudly, you know, but it's still just a T-shirt. And so we have to be vulnerable and be able to say, like, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but let me see if we can find the answer, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I can't take all of that in, but let's do it one thing at a time. And I think once you can get to those places, it will enhance the relationship you have with your child, but it'll also transfer through all relationships that you have in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The biggest thing, and what I hear you saying is it's that we have to be active listeners. Not only active listeners, but active observers. You know, we have to pay attention to the nuances of what's being said and look beneath what's being said, and also pay attention to that body language, you know, that's being put out there also. We may not be Superman, but I like to think of us as Batman, because Batman has that utility belt, and you can take and put things on that belt for another time, or pull something out for another time. So we might not be Superman, but we more like Batman.
More like Batman.
And just in case you didn't know, Akil is Batman.
Thank you.
but real quick, going off what Rhythm said, and even Juan, is in high school, it was put to me this way. It's like conversational tennis. So, you know, you have the ball and you hit it, but you have to be paying attention to where they are on the court and hit it to them.
Exactly.
And it goes back and forth like that. And that put a good picture in my head, because I'm a visual learner anyway.
Right.
So that put a good picture in my head of how communication should be.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So.
Right, that's a good analogy, and you have to make sure that you're not trying to get ahead of what you're listening to. So what that means is not sitting there listening to what someone's saying and thinking about what you want to say next.
Right.
No, you have to be present in the moment
Right.
with what's being said,
Right.
That's
and
deep.
allow it to flow within
Right,
that manner.
exactly.
Absolutely. All right. Those are some good tips for parents, and we'll do some more a little bit later. But we're going to go to the phone lines now, because we have someone joining us that I want to introduce to you. And her name is Chelselia Payne. And Chelselia Payne is the founder of Pain and Glory Ministries. Chelselia, are you with us?
I am indeed. Hello.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Dr. Sutherland. It's great to be here with you.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you. I wanted to make sure to get you on today because you have an event coming up on Saturday that is extremely important, and I wanted to make sure that our listeners were able to hear more about it and even attend if they are able to do so. So tell us about Pain in the Pews that's coming up on Friday and Saturday, and also tell us about a little bit about your ministry and how you came to doing Pain in the Pews.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. As you said, the name of my nonprofit is Pain and Glory, kind of a play on words from my last name. And we started out, our platform started out with, and it's still our main platform, which is domestic abuse awareness and prevention. And so we do a lot of things that surround that. So 4 years ago, and we've been in existence since 2005, but 4 years ago, we launched a new initiative that tied into it, which was Pain in the Pews. And it started out that Pain in the Pews was going to be a different tagline, a different topic each session. So the very first one was Pain in the Pews, domestic abuse in the church. And so, and that was a tremendous event. The next one was Pain in the Pews, serving with broken pieces. And that was for leaders or anyone who was in a leadership position, whether in church or in business, but they were broken. They were serving, but they were broken. And from that particular one, stemming from the domestic abuse in the church and spilling over to that one, is how Pain in the Pews mental health and ministry was birthed, and it's been that since 2014. They haven't changed it since then. And so with that, this coming Friday and Saturday, as you just said, is our fourth annual conference. And so, excuse me, what we're going to have on Friday night is a praise and worship experience. It's going to be an actual service on Friday night at 7:30 p.m. It's going to be at Vision for Souls Church in Mableton, and that's going to be, it's going to be great. It's going to be a time where people can just come together, no matter their faith background, and just come together and just get kind of a refreshing. Saturday morning is when we're going to have a Pain in the Pews Mental Health and Ministry Expo. And this is going to be inclusive of some dynamic guest speakers that are going to talk about everything from recovery to their experiences to how to get help, how to be healthy, all of that, as well as we're going to have a panel discussion that is going to be really informative, and the topic is going to be pain in the pulpit. Because a lot of times we forget that, what emanates from the top flows down. And so if it's not being addressed in the church, mental health is not being addressed in the church, well, let's see where it starts at. Where does that start at? Where does that stigma come from? And so, there are a lot of pastors that are hurting, that are having issues. Just 3 weeks ago, a pastor took his life, pastor in California took his life. So this is, something very prevalent. And so while that panel discussion is going on simultaneously and on purpose, we're going to have a separate pastors-only conclave that is specific for pastors to come in and just be open, honest, vulnerable, healed, whole, and that is going to be taking place while we're in the general session, and that's all on Saturday.
Okay. So
yes, ma'am.
Sounds like if you are a pastor, then definitely this conference is for you, especially on Saturday. And if you're a parishioner, this conference is for you as well, because it's opening up an avenue for folks to talk about mental health concerns that happen in the church, domestic abuse that happens in the church, and begin to think about and gain healing just from those particular issues.
Absolutely. And if I could add another component, another group that definitely should be in attendance is those who used to go to church, but because of the misunderstanding or how they were treated in church because of their mental illness or diagnosed or undiagnosed, that they are definitely ones that should be in attendance. Those that are not going to church, so, maybe there was miscommunication. Maybe people didn't handle their situation properly. A lot of times, misinformation or miseducation will cause so much more damage than we know. Simply because, I have an issue, but you're praying for me or addressing me as if the issue is a demon, which I'm not negating that that's a possibility, but know the difference. Know the difference between a clinical issue and a spiritual issue. So those people who are not in the church right now, definitely that is for them as well.
Awesome. This sounds like something that will be helpful for many people. So I appreciate your coming on the show and telling us about it. And I'll definitely be in touch
Yes,
with
ma'am.
you and talking more about it as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. This is Chosilia Payne, and so we're talking about the Mental Health and Ministry Conference, September 21st and 22nd, called Pain in the Pews. And if you just go to painandglory.com, you'll be able to see more information there as well. Thanks so much for joining us, Chosilia.
Yes, thank you for having me. I
All
appreciate
right.
you so much.
All right. Have a great rest of the day.
You too.
All righty. And we will be right back with the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show.
One thing that gives us comfort is knowing that someone is there when you need them. Well, at Pleasant Hills Insurance, that's our promise to our clients. Call 770-910-7460 today or visit our website at pleasanthillsinsurance.com for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Many of the large agencies have turned their back on the retired workforce. At Pleasant Hills Insurance, if others can't qualify you, very often we can. Pleasant Hills Insurance proudly provides options for preconditions. So call 770-910-7460 or visit pleasanthillsinsurance.com today for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Pleasant Hills Insurance, we're here when you need us.
You're listening to IBNX Radio, the home of the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show, right here every Monday from 10 a.m. to noon.
You're listening to IBNX, IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey. Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. Get in. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce. This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. We are going to take some questions from the community. So Juan, what do we have coming in from the community?
Well, all right. Today's question that's coming from the community is how to repair relationships with an adult child after being absent.
How to repair relationships with an adult child after being absent.
Right, after being an absent parent in that child's life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so being an absent parent can happen for a lot of different reasons, right?
Yes.
And so there can be a lot of emotion attached to that, not just for the child who has a parent who wants to come back in their life as an adult, but for the parent who is attempting to come back into that child's life.
Right.
There's a lot of things to consider there.
One thing I tell my adult clients who are struggling with that, because I'm finding that more and more as I sit with people, we don't know what the situation was a lot of times, you know, when they separated. And then also take the time as an adult to kind of look back over the situation and try to understand it from their perspective. You know, we don't know what the dynamics was between the mother and father, or if they were trying to protect you from something they were doing, or if there was an addiction. You know, there's so many different things that could have happened. I like to offer people grace in everything that I do, in every situation. I know I've had some clients tell me, well, they shouldn't have left, and okay, just offer them grace. Would you want your children to offer you grace for some of your mistakes? And like you said, we're not perfect. We're human. We mess up all the time. You know.
And you know, as you say, offering grace, that's a good place to start. And I also think that as we offer grace, we can offer grace cautiously, and as things evolve and understanding clarifies in terms of motivation and safety, emotional and psychological safety with that person, then grace can potentially continue to grow and abound within that relationship. So I do think you're right. Grace is a key component as well.
Yeah, it definitely is, because you have to have it on both sides.
Absolutely.
That parent has to realize that you're going to have to give that child time, as well as that child is going to have to realize that they too are going to have to give that parent time, you know. And grace does play a big part of it, because without grace, how can you move forward? Without that understanding, how can you move forward? Without forgiveness, how can you move forward?
Yeah, and even as you say that, at the same time, I can hear an adult child saying, why do I have to be patient with that parent?
Right.
I have been here all this time,
Right.
and now all of a sudden,
Right.
my parent wants to show up, and it goes back to the point that you all have made more than once today about the humanness of an individual.
Yes.
Right, and just being able to know that even if someone's situation prior to right now was something that may or may not have been in that person's control or out of that person's control, just considering that humanness becomes part of how you step out of yourself and try to step into the shoes of someone else.
Right.
And so while parents are going to need to do that, the children, you know, as adult children, we still need to try to step into that person's shoes and just
Right.
understand from a human perspective.
Right.
And it may not be that the relationship is going to develop as a parent-child relationship. It may just be an adult-to-adult relationship.
Right. Yes.
And,
Which is
and
fine.
that's fine. That's
Right.
fine.
Right.
Right? And that can be clarified as you go along. And, you know, don't feel, I kind of think too, that maybe in some cases folks, there may be guilt that people are dealing with that influences how they interact. It heightens the emotion, it heightens the reactivity potentially, it heightens the potential for conflict, right? And so oftentimes part of what could need to happen is that, you know, maybe there is a neutral third party, a neutral place, a neutral something that soothes or just kind of lends a way to calm the heightened emotion that can come within those types of situations. And so maybe find that space, find that person, find that thing that allows for a connection with reduced heightened emotion. Not that there won't be, there will be a lot of emotion, right, to deal with, right? But maybe if there is a lot of conflict, that neutral third party can at least be kind of there in the middle to help bridge that gap until you guys get to a place where you can do that on your own and begin to kind of work through.
Oh yeah, and I think that that a lot of times, and this is gonna sound a little maybe I don't know, but it's just a feeling that I feel. And so anytime you have a situation where you have a separation, divorce, and one parent is, you know, either out of the picture for a while or has their own issues that they're dealing with or whatever, I think the parent who is with the child can also at some point through their own healing become that third party. That, you know, it's kind of like, for me, like I would never, regardless of what happened between my daughter's mother and I, through the process, I never made it difficult for my daughter to have the opportunity to have relationship with her mother, you know? And so it didn't matter the pain or the issue or whatever that happened. I kind of looked at it as I need to reinforce myself. I need to work on myself so that I can then be an example of that. Even if things go south with someone, that doesn't mean that that needs to be carried throughout your life. You know, so I can still have a positive conversation with that other party, and you as my daughter will be able to see and understand that regardless of what happened, he still treats her with respect. He still handles the situation the best that he can at that moment, versus creating it to be a more negative space that then lasts for many years.
Yeah. And then the final thing probably to think about, and final not meaning the last thing, but just the final thing that we have time to talk about today, because there are many things to talk about even within this, is for parents coming into their lives of their children, their adult children, give them space to feel the pain and emotion and listen to the pain that they have experienced.
Right.
And be patient in listening to the pain that they experienced, because it may take a minute for them to really get all that out.
Right.
Anger that they may feel about, the fact that you were not there, no matter what the reason is, right? And so there may be a tendency on the parents' part to justify, well, the reason I wasn't there was this, and the reason I wasn't there was that. And it matters, but to a degree it doesn't. Because the pain still exists.
Right.
Whether the reason is quote unquote good or quote unquote bad. The goodness or badness of the reason doesn't negate the absence. The absence is the absence, right? And so there's pain associated with it, right? And so over time, as you give that adult child space to really process through that with you, then there may be an ability to shift a little bit and move away from the pain piece of it into figuring out what is this going to be, if this is going to be anything next. Right.
I think one of the biggest things to remember is that you're not going to be able to get that lost time back.
No.
You have to build on the time forward, and that's the thing, is to build on what you have from that time on forward.
And I think it'll be important for that parent to also communicate to that child if they are feeling guilt about the absence. It's also important to just communicate how you feel about that. But if you've done your work too, you also forgive yourself as a parent.
Yes.
You can't live in that guilt either.
Definitely.
And so you've whatever happened.
Oh yeah.
Right. And now, let's. Where are you now? Right. And be open about that. This is where I'm at now. I regret this. I'm sorry about this. And this is where I am right now, and this is what I hope that we can do or build right now, right? And so also get the help of a counselor. If needed, get the help of a counselor. That can certainly be very helpful as well.
It's that. I think that's one of the key things also, is to have that mediator. Like you said, get the help of a counselor, because sometimes when you have two people talking, both sides are not hearing the other. And with that person in the middle, it can take away that cloud that's there. So yes, I definitely agree with you, Dr. Sutherland. Is get that additional ear there. Get that additional person there that can help you both walk through, what you're going through, versus trying to do it alone. Because we are not built to be here and to do things alone. We are built naturally to have companionship, to be able to work together.
Absolutely.
And counselors aren't bad.
Counselors aren't.
Counseling
We're
is
not.
not bad.
Wait a minute.
Really?
It's like so many people want to
Are we good people or what?
that counseling.
You have to say that. You're my daughter.
Yes, counselors are good people.
We are.
Yes.
I look at it like this. Don't go get your cousin, your sister, your auntie. I mean, and if you feel like snatching somebody's wig off, don't be the mediator. You really can't be. Because I've seen it. Like, seriously, I've seen where people are just want to take you to 10 because they got their own issues going on. But just, to both parent and child, be patient with each other, because it's hard. It's hard to sit in a moment where you have to relive it. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you've not prepared yourself for that moment. And just parents, just take your time with your child. If they aren't ready, it's okay. At some point, They might be.
Right.
And let them walk through that anger and resentment. I don't like when people tell you can't be angry.
Right.
Oh.
Stop it.
Yes.
Let them be angry, let them deal with it. And then once that anger, and the dust settles, then go back at it.
Acknowledge their feelings.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Acknowledge it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I said we were going to be finished, but
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. But you make a very, very valid point, because that extends also to the idea of forgiveness. Right?
Yes.
People say, well, forgive and forget, as though it is a
Yeah,
thing
on and
that
off.
you can
Right.
just flip a switch
No.
and forgive, right? And it doesn't really work that way, right? You might forgive, but you might not forget for a while.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And it's going to come back up.
And it'll come back
Definitely.
up
Because
again.
they do something stupid.
The brain is way too powerful.
I'm just keeping it real.
But it's true. It's true. The minute that something negative comes up, everything else is going to come up too.
This is why I wasn't
Yes.
supposed to be talking.
I have a question.
You have a question.
What do you say to those adult children who want to have a relationship with their parent, but there's something that, both parties have to be willing to adapt, change,
Absolutely.
and
Right.
everything. What about that parent that is not going to change? What about the parent, do you just say, this is how they are and I have to accept it? Do I just, of course you love people as they are, but, is this more damaging to me, even though you want to have that relationship with them? If you get what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is there's a need in that adult child to connect with that parent, but that parent may not be a safe person to connect with or want to connect with that adult child. Is that what you're saying?
In a sense, yeah. That they may not be able to provide what that child needs at if you see what I'm saying, that because they may not know how.
They don't know how. Yeah.
And that's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
And so you have a parent potentially coming back into adult child's life with a certain capacity for relationship, right? And then you have an expectation from an adult child for more than is the capacity of that parent coming back into their life. So what does that adult child do, right? And so clearly there is a need, an unmet need in that adult child that they feel they want to be met by that parent, and that's not a possibility, right? And so sometimes it's about adjusting our expectations, and realizing that unmet need needs to be filled in a healthy way, in a different way, right? And part of that is your own, as an adult child, that's your own work that you do, work of healing that you do with your counselor, that you can't necessarily engage and do with that particular parent, right? And then from that standpoint, once you understand your own healing and you get to that point with help, you are probably in a better place at that point to accept that this is this person.
Right.
With less judgment.
Yeah.
This just is this person, and they are probably doing the best that they know to do with the knowledge that they have, right? And sometimes we just have to accept that is what it is.
That is what it is.
It is what it is, and so there may not be a level of malice from where that person is concerned, not wanting to engage with you. It's just
They may not have the ability.
they just don't have the ability,
Right.
right?
And
for
that's where
whatever
you-
reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it steps into the understanding that we're all human,
Yeah.
Right.
and that you are now an adult as that child.
Yes.
And so your relationship, you may want the parenting relationship out of it, but you may have to understand that now this is an adult relationship.
Right.
And through counseling and through things that you're doing on your side to better yourself, to be able to then handle that and understand that I love you as my parent, but this relationship is between two adults.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And it's not your fault.
And it's
I think
not your
that's the
fault.
biggest thing. It's not your
And it's
fault
not your fault.
that that parent is the way that they are.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
it is going to take that parent to recognize and realize that they need to get counseling in order for them to change. We can't change anybody. People have to want to change.
And they may not know they need to change.
Right, exactly.
That could be it too.
Yes.
That could be it too. That's a great conversation. I wish we had more time to kind of talk through some of this some more. But we're going to go to a break because they're telling me I got to go to a break. And then we will be right back with the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show.
You're listening to IBNX. IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey. Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. Get in. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce. This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio. Life comes at us fast. One thing that gives us comfort is knowing that someone is there when you need them. Well, at Pleasant Hills Insurance, that's our promise to our clients. Call 770-910-7460 today or visit our website at pleasanthillsinsurance.com for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Many of the large agencies have turned their back on the retired workforce. At Pleasant Hills Insurance, if others can't qualify you, very often we can. Pleasant Hills Insurance proudly provides options for preconditions. So call 770-910-7460 or visit pleasanthillsinsurance.com today for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Pleasant Hills Insurance. We're here when you need us.
Okay, welcome back to the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. We're going to wrap it up in this next segment. And we are just going to kind of talk through what are the key things we really want to make sure parents and young people take away from the conversation today. We've talked about quite a bit. And so if you could point to just one or two things that you want to make sure that young people take away from the conversation today, what are those one or two things that you want to make sure? Don't forget this.
For me, I would say finding a connection or support outside of your parents. Whether it's a sibling, whether it's a cousin, it's a best friend, someone who hears you, doesn't judge you, who you can talk to openly, or someone who will just listen openly as you're going through, a divorce and difficult time.
Yeah. What could make that unsafe? What mistake could a young person make that would not get them to the right person outside of their parents? Do you know what I'm asking?
No, I don't.
So young people go to people outside their parents all the time.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're
Right.
saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So how did you know who the right people were outside of me?
I would say I knew because I would leave that conversation, I would leave whatever we were doing together with a better spirit, or a better understanding of something, as opposed to anger or being on the defense or like that type of thing. I left the conversation feeling heard or feeling comforted or loved or appreciated, and that's kind of how I knew. And I was learning as well with that person.
You were learning about yourself.
Myself, yeah.
Yeah.
They were telling me about myself.
So the conversation wasn't pushing you away from your parents.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important
Yes.
for young people to understand. How do I choose the right people to feed into my life when I need that support?
Yeah.
Because it's hard
Definitely
to
is.
find the right people,
Yeah.
and it's easy to be tricked.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because misery
Yeah.
loves company.
Misery
Exactly.
loves company.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have to filter through the relationships that you have and pay attention to the relationships that you have and see what relationships that you have are supportive of you and not negative for you.
Right.
You have to look at each one of those relationships individually and see that this person is not there to tell me either way what's right or what's wrong. This person's there to listen to me. This person is there to say, you know, what do you think? How do you feel?
Right.
You know, not to get to beat you down or to beat that parent down.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that's the key to knowing what the right person is. You know, and basically for me, I think two things that I would like to make sure we get out is that you make time to play.
Make time to play.
Yes. And you also give yourself a break as a parent. So
You need
I
to
think
say
those-
that one
I was
again.
gonna say, what is that?
You definitely have to give yourself time for a break.
Yeah, and that's hard.
Yes.
That is sometimes hard to do.
Yes.
If you are pulled in multiple directions, if you feel like you don't have support, if you feel like you're doing everything on your own, it's easy to kind of find yourself in a rut or in a cyclical, just not taking time for yourself. And you'll never feel like you have time to take for yourself.
Right.
You just have to take it.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Self-care.
Yeah, you have to. It's kind of like the mask in the airplane. You know, they say put the mask on yourself before your own child.
Right.
You know, and I remember the first time I heard that, and I was like, "Yo, that's crazy." Sacrifice my kid, you know? But they're like, "Yo, if you can't breathe, you won't be able to put the mask on." And it's the same with that. Is you have to take a break from it and kind of re-energize and refocus and recenter yourself.
And don't feel guilty about it.
Right. Yeah. Because you're doing it to be better prepared to help them.
That's right. That's right. What else? Yeah.
Okay, so also I would say, as you were saying, take time for yourself. For parents, I would say as children, adult children, if you're younger, to invest in yourself in terms of reading books, listening to podcasts, choosing the right music. There's this certain book called The Cards of Life by Erica Pooler, When All Hope Is Gone, Trust and Then Believe. And this book talks about so many situations that people have gone through. It's their stories, and it's there to encourage and inspire you as you go through your own story. Take points that they went through, so maybe you don't make that same mistake, and know that you're not alone in what you're going through. And there will be a picture or a link on your website later.
There are actually folks who are looking can actually see the picture of the book right now.
Awesome.
As we're talking about it.
So
and then we'll also put it on the website.
Awesome. So you guys go check that out because it's coming out. She also has other books. This book isn't out yet, but it's in the making. And so when it comes out, just look for it because that's going to be something really vital to healing and stuff.
Awesome. What else do we want to make sure folks go away with?
Laughter.
Yes.
Lots of laughter.
Find a way to laugh.
Yes.
Find a way to laugh.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you do something silly, laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
That's okay too
It's
sometimes.
okay to laugh at yourself.
The world will take you seriously enough.
Yeah.
So
Don't take yourself so seriously.
serious.
Yes. What else?
I would say mine would be to respond from the lens of love.
Nice.
It's when you are engaging in any conversation and having communication with each other is come and speak out of love versus judgment or ridicule or I have all the answers and you don't know what you're talking about. Is really pay attention, listen, but then when you speak from a place of love. And I think that will keep the conversation and communication pathways wide open.
Right.
And when you say speak from a place of love, the thing that comes to me is when you love someone and when you have love for someone, it offers a level of grace just underlaying that.
Absolutely.
So everything you hear from that person is through a grace lens.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
An understanding of the humanness of the person.
Yeah.
And just kind of looking for how do I just understand better?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I love this person and I want to offer love and I want to offer grace. I like the way you put that. Yeah.
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 For me, it would be active listening. and not listening from a defensive standpoint.
Right.
Whether it's the parent or the child, like really listen to what they're saying to you, and take it in. Sometimes, I have to walk away personally and process before I can come back and talk with you. You know what I'm saying? Because my feelings get hurt too. You know what I'm saying? So just walk away. If you have to take that moment, just like you were saying, Rhythm, with dads, tell your kids, hey, look, I need you to slow down and let me process this. As a parent or even as a child, listen to what they're saying. And if you need time to step away and then come back to the conversation and say, I heard what you were saying. And this is where I feel we need to be, or for me in my life.
Yeah.
So.
And when you step away, remember, don't just step away.
No.
Say, I want to hear you.
Yes.
I need a little bit of time. Can we come back to this?
Yes.
Right.
And give them a time frame.
Yes,
Can we come back to this in 15 minutes?
Right.
Yes.
Don't just say, can we come back to it?
Right.
Because then that could be days.
Right.
And then,
Sometimes it might take days.
okay, well,
You still
let
give
me,
that.
But
You still give that. Give
each day?
that time period.
you know what? I need
I
another
need another
day.
day.
Let's come
another
back
day.
to this tomorrow. Give me another day. Yeah.
so I will say to them, because I'm not going to let that one go.
Yeah.
Be careful that you're not then avoiding.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the longer you let it go, the easier it will be to avoid and to not come back to it.
Right.
Right? And so if you find that it's taken you more than an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and you're going through the entire day and you're getting to, then you probably need to think about, okay, am I avoiding, or do I need some other help here to try to be able to re-engage, right? Maybe the other person hasn't cooled off.
Right.
But if it's taking you hours and hours and hours to cool off,
Ask yourself
there's a little
why.
bit more there to think
Of
about.
course.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just that situation, right?
Yeah.
And so all of that is signs. All those are signs that maybe the help of a counselor would be good,
Yes.
either for you or for both of you, or some combination thereof, right? And that's awesome. That's okay, because what that means is that you're on the path to working it out. Right? It means you're not stalled. It just means I realize that we need something else here. Let's get some other help so we can continue to move forward and not just kind of stall ourselves. Yeah. Yeah. You're smiling.
Sometimes it takes a little time.
All right.
Know
Well,
it.
we have been talking today with Rhythm and Shannon Rose and Akil, Nigel. I'm not sure which one you want me to use. Nigel.
Yeah.
And talking about single parent families, and we've covered a lot of information, and so I thank you for being on the show today and for lending us your knowledge and speaking into the lives of folks who are listening and watching.
Thank you.
If you have been listening and watching, I hope that this has been helpful for you and that the information here is something that you can use and put into practical and immediate use in your family towards improving your family relationships. Thank you for joining us on the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. We'll be back next Monday at 10 a.m. And coming up at noon is the Leadership Blend with Ricardo Rice. So stay right here. Don't go anywhere. Just come on back and hang out with Ricardo. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show. If you have any questions about the broadcast, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Sonja at www.helpformyfamily.com. That's www.helpformyfamily.com. And be sure to join us every week at this same time for the Dr. Sonja Sutherland Show, right here on IBNX Radio.
IBNX Radio.